Now, e-commerce is a little bit more difficult because you have SKUs, and your SKU list is going to either be like, I make $10 in that one and I make $1,000 in that one, and everywhere in between. Like there always is that sort of issue. So what I'll do is I'll talk about the subscription model first, and then we'll move into multiple SKU lists. So
Okay.
in the subscription model, this is actually something that is very, 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 very simple. You're simply trying to identify your LTV, your lifetime value. That is the best way to grow a subscribing company. Is what do we extract from these users in a 1, 3, 6, 9, 12-month timeline? And the 1, 3, 6, 9, 12-month timeline is extremely important because that will tell you how much you can afford to spend per day and how much you can afford to spend for a new customer, because it's simply just a divisional of that. I'm actually going to pull up a real account first that's non subscription, but does showcase the LTV. This is a company that we started working with, that we started to increase its AOV because they're running really heavy, and we needed to increase that AOV. And when you're looking at like the last 90 days compared to the previous 90 days, it's up 16%. When you see the last 90 days compared to previous year before they rebranded, then it's up 31%. This is important, that 31% up to get to like the 400 level, because as the company essentially rebranded and we're now starting to work with them more and more, that high AOV is going to allow us to scale much faster and also take a look at our cohorts. So as we look at our cohort retention analysis tool, this thing here is essentially going to be amount spent per customer, including the first order in a cohort. So you want to show the first order. And then you can see here, if we're just looking at the last 12 months, these people used to be with low AOVs. After 12 months or 11 months, $250, like kind of total. Now we're making essentially like 400 within the first month. That's a big jump. So when you're looking at like all year, they only made us 250. Now in the first order, they make over 300, sometimes 350. And now we're increasing that. So increasing the LTV of a customer is paramount. It's the first big lever you can pull to say, well, wait, if I went from making $200 a year a customer to $400 a year per customer, that allows me to take my $50 NCAC target. Now it's a $100 NCAC target. I can spend a lot more. So scalability comes when you can love on your existing users base more. So just a quick pro tip there. But you can identify what your average LTV is more recently, but now let's just go out to 6 months. So if the amount spent per order is about 350 or 400, we can see that we make about 350 or $400 anywhere between month 1 and month 6. So we're just going to call it $400 is our 1 month LTV. And then we'll use, if we're looking at the rate of, 300 to 400, 320 to 385, it looks like it gains about $60 per month. Okay. So $60 per month is the rate of increase. So if we're looking at $400 is the average order value, and then we add $60 for every month, that is kind of like the LTV that we can assume. I'm just using round numbers. This is a blueprint. So basically, as long as we have a over $400 average order value and beyond, we can maintain that metric, which means you have to watch the AOV. AOV all of a sudden starts to drop in the 280s. You have to restructure all of your targeting. Not targeting as in pay media, targeting in terms of your goal tracking target. Like, what are you targeting as a goal? So that's important to understand that, because that is a variable, and that's on SKU list, time of year, seasonality, discounts, and all the other stuff. So those are things that are always live ecosystems that are always moving. You imagine that last 30 days, if you're like, hey, we're down, $237,000 in discounts. Okay. Like that's a big factor when you're talking about 800 grand. Okay. I'll pause there.
Gotcha. So I think another thing too, because I feel like, data is obviously really important, but then it also comes down to understanding what the actual customer journey is in the first place. So you might find the trend of going from 280 to 400 in the data be, what you just showcased, or it might not happen kind of thing. But I think a lot of times it's based on like the type of product that the user consumes or buys versus the AOV. I know that you know that, but I'm just saying it for everyone else. So we think about the logic of it. I think that I'm trying to think, like that juice brand you were talking about, where they do like a cleanse.
Yeah. They never come back.
And then they never come back. Yeah. But but the logic there was, okay, if someone, has a juice cleanse, they're not going to do another juice cleanse. They're done with it. They're going to now go and buy some of the product or go back to whatever they were doing before kind of thing.
Hmm.
But if we were to think about, okay, what's the next logical step in the sequence that we could potentially add to the LTV? Well, maybe we, add in probiotics, or we have some other step in the sequence that would make logical sense from someone to go from point A to point B.
Hmm.
So the same thing I think applies when it comes to LTV, where you just have to understand if people are buying more reusable products or they have more LTV after buying product A, why is that happening in the first place? Why is a $400 AOV product causing them to come back? And
Hmm.
then work your way back from there, and then maybe come up with another solution for like the $280 product to then
Hmm.
add more LTV to that. So I think that's super important, that more of a business owner thing, but can change your KPIs and use the
Yeah.
data.
Yeah, and that's kind of things that always you have to look at too. Is like, hey, if my return customer rate is at 62%, and these people are spending 350 on average, okay, like that's a really nice LTV there. That's how you can see this thing. These people gain $60 per month on average. That's the current rate of increase. So what's nice about this is when you have those averages and however you're getting to them, and you say, okay, if I plot this out on a chart, and I was going to use Google Sheets and I can't type, so autocorrect's going to help me there. So if you look at a chart here and you're like, okay, month 1 through, and let's just say like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Whoops, I did 0, 11, 12. Okay. Well, 9, 10. I'm
10,
messing
11,
up.
12.
10,
Come
11,
on,
12.
John.
There
You
we go.
gotta
I
come
can't
on,
count.
John. You gotta count. What the heck?
Nah. And so if we look at this and say, hey, it's worth 400, then it's like, okay, then it's like 460, and then it's going to be 520, and then it's going to be 580, and then it's going to be 640, and then it's going to be 700. You're kind of seeing all of these out there in terms of, okay, I know exactly how much money I can spend per new customer because they're going to gain $60 on average every single month. So when you're looking at NCAC targets, 880, then let's do 940, and then let's do 1,000. Okay, so this is $400 gaining $60 per month all the way up to $1,000. Excellent. So we have that calculation there. When you're saying, hey, money's really tight and we can't really afford to scale too much, your NCAC target might actually be $200. Why? Well, let's say you have 50% net profit margins. And 50% net profit margin of $400 leaves you with $200 as your average top NCAC ceiling. If you go over $200, we lose $1. If you go under $200, we gain $1. Very linear or very binary. It's either pass or fail grade. Now, if you look at this at a 50 percentile, though, and well, actually, I'll just copy and paste this one. If you look at this in always a 50 percentile, then all of these here, you can simply just divide by 2. So you can see halfway point, if this is worth 700, you can afford a $350 NCAC. And if this is at 1,000, you can afford a $500 NCAC. Now, how can you afford a $500 NCAC in the future? Like 12 months, because you're looking at what you call your NCAC payback. And let me make this a little bit bigger for everyone out there. The NCAC payback means, okay, if I know that I am cash flush and cash positive and I'm happy and I want to hit the gas hard, well, if you hit the gas hard, do you want to say, hey, you can't go over 200? Do you say you can't go over 350? Or do you say you can't go over 500? Because any one that you choose, either point, there's going to be a time period up to that time period where you're running into the negative, in the red. And then after that time period, you're running, well, that didn't work. After that time period, you're then running into the Black Friday, like that as an example. Say, hey, we're going to choose a $350 NCAC target in our scale. And we know that we're going to be not profitable for 7 months. Okay, we're going to choose an NCAC target that's $500. We know we're not going to be profitable on these people for 12 months. Why? Well, they only spent $200 and I wanted to spend $500, and it took all this time for them to spend $500 with us. And that's called an NCAC payback. How long does it take for our NCAC to be paid back to us? That's dependent upon the month.
And
Now,
you
this
have
works.
technically month 13 in a sense too.
Yeah, month
So
24. We do that as well.
That's the
Yeah.
incentive behind it, though, is pay more, get the advantage, and then cash on it.
Yeah,
as time
I
goes
can
on.
afford more than my competitors because I think of my metrics differently than they do. They're looking
Yeah.
at in-platform ROAS of 4x, which means they have to have like a $50 NCAC target. Well, I'm just sitting
Yeah.
there churning and burning and passing them and smoking them because they didn't do the actual hard work and say, what can I afford? They just took direction from the owner that says, hey, that podcast I heard yesterday, the TED Talk, said I need a 4x in Google. So I don't know, give me a 4x in Google. That's the amateur way, but that's also what 95% of companies
It's
do.
very common, yeah.
Yeah. So 95% of the time they fuck this up, and that's why we scale way past them. So when you're looking at NCAC paybacks, what we know we can afford to spend based on our total net total net profit from that user during that time, not total gross profit. What's the net profit? Net keeps the light on, gross looks great on P&Ls. So that's what we have to do, is what can we know we can afford without going over, without losing a dollar. And that decides your level of aggressiveness and how fast you can scale. Because very little do you be like, oh, let's just double the AOV, or hey, let's just get these customers for half price. We can think of this as, well, how much money are we going to make over a course of time? And then we know what we can afford to pay. Now, this LTV model looks very similar to the subscription model. The subscription model and the LTV model are the same model. It's an NCAC, cost per acquired first time customer, that is compared to, not divided by, but compared to the average lifetime value or average time value of what goal. Lifetime is not 3 months. Yeah, it's like your 3-month time frame, your 6-month, your 9-month, your 12-month life cycle, lifetime. We're just going to call it lifetime value. It's not the actual lifetime, but it's the value that we're deriving from that time period.
Subscription value. Yeah,
exactly right. So you can have multiple purchases or you can have subscription. The only difference is one just gets auto billed. Okay. So that's the only difference between those two periods. This is my own personal brand. What you're going to see here is, if I look at the last 30 days on average, this metric doesn't really change much. 1.3% difference. Okay. An average of 90 days difference. My 1.3% up changes to 9% up. So it gets a little bit better, but you can see that it's about 7.77 or 7.77. It really doesn't change. Like, this thing is just basically compared to the time period from before. It is fairly static. Okay, so we know that our active subscriber average orders is 7.77. Now, we don't know that in here, but we know from manual calculations, we make about $109 per order. That's about what we can identify in the average order value. We did this through a different tracker. We have this here. We're not going to go through all of the crap that we have inside of here because it's big and includes all this kind of stuff. But long story short, we have about a $109 average order value of our subscribers, because we have a 3-pack that most people upcharge to, some don't. So we're going through cost sells, upsells, lifetime. I mean, it's a whole big calculation that's specific to this business. But that was about $109. So we have to look at this and say, okay, so we have a $109 average order value from our subscribers multiplied by the lifetime value of these people of 7.77. So I make $846 on every new customer. We have a 65% profit margin. So multiply that by 0.65, and it comes out to be a $550 NCAC ceiling. We cannot go over $550.50. If we go over it by $1, we're screwed. We lost $1. So that is our NCAC ceiling for a subscriber. Okay, so what we said here is, if we know that that's our total lifetime value, what's cool about this is it allows you to move into a situation now where you're doing a lot of business building and not a lot of tinkering. And that's when you see that's when you see things shift. So I'm going to hop into the back end of this brand here, my company, and we're going to go through just a real simple calculation. So we know that our average order value is $78 here. On subscribers, it's $109. So if we look at what's funny is, we look at our $78 average order value, we're very happy spending $313 to make $70. That's basically what this means. Now, mathematically, that's where most people will say, like, what do you mean your ROAS is 0.2? Yeah. Yeah, it is. It sucks, but it works. Hey, if you like this video, we have a school community where we have a few hundred members, and we cover topics, everything from the basics to all the way to the like hyper crazy advanced stuff that's like coming out next month. So a few hundred members there. We go live twice a week, something with an hour-long education about something that is very relevant to the community that week, plus a weekly Q&A where you just get to come and bring us all of your problems, and we solve them one at a time.
So I have a link below in the description if you want to join. And then obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and we can answer those for you. And we'll see you in there.